There's another anniversary coming up shortly. As of the 1st of November, I have been your full-time minister for 3 full years now. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And for probably about 2 of those years, I haven't used notes. Once in a while I'll bring something that I want to read verbatim, but I usually ponder a topic. I want to clarify that one more time. Sometimes I can concentrate or think about something, but when I ponder it, I include my heart and my core in that conversation, in that transaction. Today I'm going to read the message. I received an email from Gil Gardner a few days ago. And as I began to read it, I thought, wow, that's a little poignant. Just kind of caught me a little bit wrong. And I'll explain that. What I'm going to read is from Carl Palmack. He's the pianist and director of music at Boston Conservatory. And I'll just explain a little bit. I've been playing music and entertaining people for 63 years, I think. And in all that time, never have I thought of myself as a good singer or a good musician. I think I'm a pretty good entertainer. And keeping that in mind, you'll see why I got a little angst when I started reading this article. But there have only been a couple of times in my life that I have felt like I was a musician. And one of those times was right here, when Debbie and Sylvan included me in a song called El Dia Que Me Quieres. And that was beautiful music. And I felt like a musician, not an entertainer. Last night, I was an entertainer. Sunday mornings, I feel that I'm a teacher. And I think a good teacher is entertaining without being entertainment. And that's a line that I'm very aware of. And once in a while I cross over. And when I do, I become very disappointed because I'm not doing my job. So I'm going to read this, and it's a little lengthy. I was going to edit it out and just read the juicy parts, but I think I don't want to leave out anything this fellow says. And I think if you pay attention, some of it gets a little wordy, but if you pay attention, I think every person in here will find something of value they can take home with them. This is a welcome address to freshman parents at Boston Conservatory, and in this message he will tell them a little bit about the message he's going to give to the freshman students the following week. One of my parents' deepest fears, I suspect, is that society would not properly value me as a musician, that I wouldn't be appreciated. I had very good grades in high school, and I was good in science and math, and they imagined that as a doctor or a research chemist or an engineer, I might be more appreciated than I would be as a musician. I still remember my mother's remark when I announced my decision to apply at music school. She said, "You're wasting your SAT scores." On some level, I think my parents were not sure themselves what the value of music was and what its purpose was. And they loved music. They listened to classical music all the time. They just weren't really clear about its function. So let me talk about that a little bit, because we live in a society that puts music in the arts and entertainment section of the newspaper. And serious music, the kind your kids are about to engage in, has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with entertainment. In fact, it's the opposite of entertainment. Let me talk a little bit about music and how it works. The first people to understand how music really works were the ancient Greeks. And this is going to fascinate you. The Greeks said that music and astronomy were two sides of the same coin. Astronomy was seen as the study of relationships between observable, permanent, external objects. And music was seen as the study of relationships between individual, internal, hidden objects. Music has a way of finding the big, invisible, moving pieces inside our hearts and souls and helping us figure out the position of the things inside of us. Let me give you some examples of how this works. One of the most profound musical composers, and I'm going to murder some of these names, of all times is the Quartet for the End of Time, written by French composer Olivier Messiaen. Cool. In 1940. Messiaen was 31 years old when France entered the war against Nazi Germany. He was captured by the Germans in June 1940 and sent across Germany in a cattle car and imprisoned in a concentration camp. He was fortunate to find a sympathetic prison guard who gave him paper and a place to compose. There were 3 other musicians in the camp, a cellist, a violinist, and a clarinetist. And Messiaen wrote the quartet with these specific players in mind. It was performed in January 1941 for 4,000 prisoners and guards in the prison camp. Today it is one of the most famous masterpieces in the repertoire. Given what we have since learned about life in concentration camps, why would anybody in his right mind waste time and energy writing or playing music? There was barely enough energy on a good day to find food and water, to avoid a beating, to stay warm, and to escape torture. Why would anybody bother with music? Yet, from the camps, we have poetry, we have music, we have visual art. And it wasn't just this one fantastic Messiaen. Many other people created art. Why? Well, in place where people are only focused on survival, on the bare necessities, the obvious conclusion is that art must be somehow essential for life. The camps were without money, without hope, without commerce, without recreation, without basic respect, but they were not without art. Art is part of survival. Art is part of the human spirit, and an unquestionable expression of who we are. Art is one of the ways we say, I'm alive and my life has meaning. On September 12th in 2001, I was a resident of Manhattan. That morning I reached a new understanding of my art and its relationship to the world. I sat down at the piano that morning at 10 a.m. to practice, as was my daily routine. I did it by force of habit, without thinking about it. I lifted the cover on the keyboard and opened my music. I put my hands on the keys. hands off the keys. And I sat there and thought, does this even matter? Isn't this completely irrelevant? Playing the piano right now, given what happened in the city yesterday, seems silly, absurd, irreverent, and pointless. Why am I here? What place has a musician in this moment in time? Who needs a piano player right now? I was completely lost. And then I, along with the rest of New York, went through the journey of getting through that week. I did not play the piano that day, and in fact, I contemplated briefly whether I would ever want to play the piano again. And then I observed how we got through the day. At least in my neighborhood, we didn't shoot hoops or play Scrabble. We didn't play cards to pass the time. We didn't watch TV. We didn't shop. And most certainly, we didn't go to the mall. The first organized activity that I saw in New York that same day was singing. People sang. People sang around the firehouses. People sang, "We Shall Overcome." Lots of people sang, "America the Beautiful." The first organized public event that I remember was the Brahms Requiem later that week at Lincoln Center with the New York Philharmonic. The first organized public expression of grief. Our first communal response to that historic event was a concert. That was the beginning of a sense that life might go on. The U.S. military secured the airspace, but recovery was led by the arts, by the music in particular that very night. From these two experiences, I've come to understand that music is not part of arts and entertainment, as the newspaper section would have us believe. It's not a luxury, not a lavish thing that we fund from the leftovers of our budget, not a plaything or an amusement or a pastime. Music is a basic need of human survival. Music is one of the ways we make sense of our lives. One of the ways in which we express feelings when we have no words. A way for us to understand things with our hearts when we can't with our minds. Some of you may know Samuel Barber's heart-wrenching, beautiful piece, Adagio for Strings. If you don't know it by that name, then some of you may know it as the background music which accompanied Oliver Stone's movie Platoon, a film about the Vietnam War. If you know that piece of music, either way, you know that it has the ability to crack your heart open like a walnut. It can make you cry over sadness you didn't know you had. Music can slip beneath our conscious reality to get at what's really going inside us, the way a very good therapist can. I bet that you've never been to a wedding where there was obviously no music. There might have been only a little music, and that might have been somewhat really bad music. But I bet you there was some music. And something very predictable happens at weddings. People all get pent up with all kinds of emotions. And then there's some musical moment and where the action of the wedding stops and someone sings or plays the flute or something. And even if the music is lame, even if the quality isn't good, predictably 30 or 40% of the people who are there start crying. Cry a couple of moments after the music starts. Why? The Greeks. Music allows us to move around those big and invisible pieces of ourselves and rearrange our insides so that we can express what we feel even when we can't talk about it. Can you imagine watching Indiana Jones or Superman or Star Wars with dialogue but no music? What is it about the music swelling up at just the right moment in E.T. that all of the softies in the audience start crying at exactly the same moment? I guarantee if you showed that movie with music stripped out, it wouldn't happen. The Greeks. Music is the understanding of the relationship between the invisible internal objects. I'll give you one more example. The story of the most important concert of my life. I must tell you that I've played a little less than 1,000 concerts in my life so far. I played in places that I thought were important. I like playing in Carnegie Hall. I enjoyed playing in Paris. It made me very happy to please the critics in St. Petersburg. I played for people I thought were important, music critics, major newspapers, foreign heads of state. The most important concert of my entire life took place in a nursing home in Fargo, North Dakota, about 4 years ago. I was playing with this very dear friend of mine who is a violinist. We began, as we often do, with Aaron Copland's Sonata, which was written during World War II and dedicated to a young friend of Copland's, a young pilot who'd been shot down during the war. Now, we often talk to our audiences about the pieces we're going to play rather than providing them with written program notes. But in this case, because we began the concert with this piece, we decided to talk about the piece later in the program and just start off by playing the music without explanation. Midway through the piece, an elderly man seated in a wheelchair near the front began to weep. This man, whom I met later, was clearly a soldier. Even in his 70s, it was clear from his buzz-cut hair, square jaw, general demeanor that he had spent a good deal of his life in the military. I thought it was a little odd that someone would be moved to tears by that particular movement, by that particular piece. But it wasn't the first time I've heard crying in a concert. And we went on with the concert and finished the piece. When we came out to play the next piece on the program, we decided to talk about both the first and the second pieces, and we described the circumstances in which Copland had written this piece. It mentioned that it was dedicated to a downed pilot. The man in the front row of the audience became so disturbed he had to leave the auditorium. I honestly figured that we would not see him again, but he did come backstage afterwards, tears and all, to explain himself. What he told us was this. During World War II, I was a pilot. I was in an aerial combat situation where one of my team's plane was hit. I watched my friend bail out and watched his parachute open. But the Japanese planes, which had engaged us in return machine gun fire, shot across the parachute and the cords were separated. And I watched my friend drop into the ocean, realizing he was lost. I've not thought about this for many years, but during that first piece of music he played, this memory returned to me so vividly that it was as though I was reliving it. I didn't understand why this was happening. Why now? But then you came out to explain that this piece of music was written to commemorate a lost pilot. It was a little more than I could handle. How does the music do that? How did it find those feelings and those memories in me? Remember the Greeks. Music is the study of invisible relationships between internal objects. This concert in Fargo was the most important work I've ever done. For me to play with this old soldier and help him connect somehow with Aaron Cole and to connect their memories to their lost friends, to help them remember and mourn. This is my work. This is why music matters. What follows is a part of the talk I will give this year's freshman's class when I welcome them in a few days from now. The responsibility I will charge your sons and daughters with is this. If we were a medical school and you were here as a med student practicing appendectomies, you'd take your work very seriously. And you should. And you might imagine that some night at 2 a.m. someone is going to waltz into your emergency room and you're going to have to save their life. Well, my friends, someday at 8 p.m., someone is going to walk into your concert hall and bring you a mind that is confused, a heart that is overwhelmed, a soul that is weary. Whether they go out whole again will depend partly on how well you do your craft. You're not here to become an entertainer. You don't have to sell yourself. The truth is, you don't have to sell. Being a musician isn't about dispensing a product like selling machets. I'm not an entertainer. I'm a lot closer to a paramedic, a firefighter, a rescue worker. You're here to become sort of a therapist for the human soul, a spiritual version of a chiropractor, a physical therapist, someone who works with our insides to see that they get things to line up, to see if we can come into harmony with ourselves and be healthy and happy and well. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I expect you not only to master music, I expect you to save the planet. If there is a future wave of wellness on this planet, of harmony, of peace, of an end to war, of mutual understanding, of equality, of fairness, I don't expect it will come from a government, a military force, or a corporation. I no longer even expect it to come from the religions of the world, which together seem to have brought us as much war as they have peace. If there is a future of peace for humankind, there is to be an understanding of how these invisible internal things should fit together. I expect it will come from the artists, because that's what they do. As in the concentration camp in the evening of 9/11, the artists are the ones might be able to help us with our internal, invisible things. And along with the arts, and along with music, we have that wonderful gift of meditation. All of these things are designed to help us bring about harmony in our invisible internal selves. We have the wherewithal to do that. That's it, folks. Let's make a little peace in this world. But no, it has to be here. Has to